Welcome to Livestock Products Technology Lecture Series. As you know, we are continuously discussing about fish processing and preservation. Today's topic is canning of fish. Earlier long back, I have a lecture on canning of meat and retort processing or retort pouch processing. That was little bit precised specifically for the undergraduate students. But this lecture is going to be more details and lengthy, and it will be useful more for the postgraduate students and also for UG students. The content is equally similar for the meat also. So canning of meat and fish will be almost similar. So here I will discuss in more details about what is canning, what is can, what is the advantages, what is the process details, what are the procedures, and what are the further benefits of canning. You can see in this picture, these are the two-piece can. Actually, it will have one part container and one part as the lid. So there are different shape and size like rectangular, round, and there are some three-piece can where one piece makes the roll and two other piece makes the lid. So this can was basically discovered by Peter Durand, and later it was further upgraded, and the actual father of canning we consider as Nicholas Appert. So in the earlier lecture we have discussed about principles of preservation, and many of these principles are equally used as processing. So thermal processing is the application of heat for both preservation and processing. In thermal processing is a method to kill the spoilage microbes in high temperature, and this is applied in case of can where it's a process of preservation achieved by thermal sterilization in sealed containers. As we know, pasteurization is one of the first discovery for preservation of food, where Louis Pasteur first discovered that by heating the germs can be killed and food won't get spoiled. From that, the idea was further improved and the can was developed, and the process of canning was developed by Nicholas Appert, as I already told. So canning mostly also preserve the sensory attributes of meat or fish. So in this process, first food is partially heated, then sealed in a container, and then it is heated at a high temperature. So this temperature can be at a lower level or at a very high level. Accordingly, we call it pasteurization or sterilization. As I mentioned, this thermal processing can be at a two level or two regimes of temperature. One is at a lower temperature, which is called pasteurization. Another at a very high temperature, that is called sterilization. So pasteurization we all know, in case of milk it is most common, where it is heated at around 72 degrees Celsius for a very short time. Here pasteurization refers to moderate heating in the temperature range of 58 to 75 degrees Celsius, and in this most of the microorganisms will be killed, but it cannot be self-stable because some organisms will be still there which can grow. So for storage purpose, the pasteurized can should be stored in refrigerator. So the other one of canning is sterilization, that is the thermal processing at a very high temperature. So it refers to heating at above 100 degrees Celsius where all microbes are killed. So sterilization means all the microbes should be killed, and generally it is possible at a high pressure and at a temperature of 121 degrees Celsius at 15 pounds of pressure. So this heat treatment renders the fish or meat products commercially sterile, and the bacterial spores present also can be killed if the temperature is kept 121 degrees Celsius and above. But if it is just above 100 degree, then some spore may survive. This kind of products, if it is fully sterile, then it will be shelf stable for 2 to 3 years in can without any refrigeration. Whereas there is a modified version of canning. Now in modern canning it is called retort pouch processing. Retort pouch processing, which is done in a plastic pouches. That's a multi-layer pouch. In that case it can be stored around 1 year. So in the right side, just I want to explain, that is the thermometer related to food. If you can see that below 0 degree or up to 5 degree, this is a very low temperature where most of the organism cannot grow. Whereas when it goes sub zero at minus 18 degree, no organism can grow. That is the freezing condition. And above 5, some psychrophilic organisms can grow very slowly, so food will spoil after some time. And the temperature around 30 to 35 or up to 40, most of the organism grow very easily. That's the optimum temperature for most of the growth, most of the microorganism, and that is called the mesophilic organisms. And above 60, most of the organism cannot grow, only very few can grow between 50 to 60 degree. They are called the thermophilic organisms. Here we will discuss some of the effect of this thermal processing or heat treatment, but it depends on the type of fish, because different fish has got different moisture content, fat content and texture. Accordingly, the effect of heat differs. So these factors has a bearing on the effect of thermal processing. Firstly, the moisture is there in the meat or fish, and this heating becomes a moist heating, which has got a more severe impact on the microbes and killing them, and also it is more lethal for killing the spores. So when we are heating along with water or steam, that is moist heating, which is more lethal, which can kill all the microbes more easily or more lethal, and it can kill all the spores also. The fish product with higher moisture naturally will need less heating. So any processed product which is having less moisture, there the heating effect will be less. Further, this heat treatment also imparts sulfhydryl flavor in cans and modifies texture also. So because of the heating, some sulfhydryl compounds are produced which gives a specific flavor, and it has a impact due to the very high pressure and temperature. So it modifies the texture. Sometime in case of comminuted meat product, it will have a more impact and the product may become more pasty or lose the desirable texture. In continuation about the thermal processing and effect of heat processing, further we will see the factors of heat penetration. Here the most important factor is the size and shape of the container. That is the what kind of size and what is the shape. If it is very big, then the heating will take more time to reach the center, or if it is narrow or if it is wide and rectangular, the depth is less. So accordingly heat distribution changes. So when the depth is less, the heating will be faster to the center. Similarly, the material of container. So glass has lower rate than metal can. So in old days, mostly glass containers were used for canning of fish or meat. So gas is a very poor conductor of heat, so it takes more time for heating. But later the metal cans are used. In case of metal, the conductivity is better, so heating will be more efficient or faster. Another factor is the initial temperature of food. The food which we are packing or filling into the container, the temperature matters. That's why generally there is a preheating of the food material. Either it is meat or fish, there will be a pre-cooking. After that it will be filled and sealing is done. So in that case the heating further will be easy. Next is the retort temperature, that is the processing temperature at which we are doing the canning. So later we are going to discuss about the retort, that's like a autoclave. So it uses a very high temperature beyond 120 degrees Celsius. So that temperature is a very important factor. So if the retort temperature is 120 or if the retort temperature is 140, there can be lot of differences in the heat penetration. Another important factor is the rotation and agitation. So this modern retort which works with the principle of autoclave is basically called as hydrostatic principle or hydrostatic retorts. So these retorts will have a process or mechanism for agitation, the turning the containers continuously. So there are agitating and non-agitating retorts. So if it is agitating, then the containers will continuously changing their position, so that helps in better heat distribution and more efficiency in processing. Now we will discuss about the basics of canning. As I told in details about the thermal processing or thermal preservation, what is the principle, how the high heat is used for killing the microbes and used for long-term storage, and it is also a processing. So this application in case of fish or meat is a very old technology. This is one of the oldest scientific technology for long-term preservation of meat and fish. And nowadays there are further modernization with the revolution in plastic materials, and they have developed the multi-layer laminates which are used for canning. So then it is called retort pouch, and the method is called retort pouch processing. So this basics of canning just quickly we will go through. That is, this is a very effective method, though costly, because it involves a high-tech machineries. So it's a costly process. The product is very good and retains much of the flavor. So this products is very good, flavor is good, and long-term storage, and we can store it at room temperature. Here the fish is first cleaned and then cut to proper boneless pieces. Both in case of meat or fish we can do the same thing. The pieces are then brined or pickled to improve taste. So in case of fish, generally pickling is done with brine solution. In case of meat, sometimes a gravy is prepared for the requirement. Then there is a preliminary cooking, that is also called pre-cooking, which is carried out for a partial heating and also to inactivate the existing enzymes. Then there is a partial cooking of the pieces which is already in the can, and that helps in removing some of the air at the top and create a vacuum. So then it is sealed hermetically. So this is a very special process where through the steam the air is removed and it is sealed immediately. Sometimes it is done automatically, sometimes in a manual manner. And this hermetical sealing means nothing can enter, like it is totally air and moisture impermeable, no bacteria can grow. So there is total prevention of further contamination. After this complete sealing, there is a final heating or sterilization at a very high temperature that kills all the microbes present inside, and it is already sealed, so there is no contamination, no spoilage, and we can get a very long-term storage. So the finally shelf life depends on quality of raw material, temperature of processing, and vacuum created in the cans during sealing. So now we have discussed in details about the background and principles of thermal processing, thermal preservation and canning. Now we will go more into the specific about fish or meat canning. So it is a process involving heat treatment of fish or meat in sealed containers made of tin plates, aluminum cans or glass until the product has been fully sterilized. So meat or fish first filled, sealed completely, and then sterilized by high heat treatment. So this container can be of tin or iron cans with a tin coating, or aluminum cans, or the glass. The canned fish or meat is also prevented from contamination by pathogenic organisms by storing them in a virtually airtight package. So this package is completely impermeable to air, moisture and bacteria, so no further contamination is allowed. And if the heat treatment is properly carried out, the canned fish may be remain in storage or without spoilage for several years without refrigeration. So without refrigeration we can store such a processed meat or fish for a long time, up to 3 years. In continuation about fish canning, as I mentioned earlier, the canning provides self-stability. So it need not be kept under refrigeration, and canned fish will remain fresh for a 2 to 3 years in case of sterilized canning. For canning fish, earlier days jar used to be used, glass jars, but those jars should be thoroughly cleaned with hot water and sterilized. And then this glass jar will have glass threads and best for fish or meat canning. So glass jar in the mouth will have thread that helps in complete sealing with the lid. So these glass jars generally will have two kind of lids for tight sealing. One is the glass lid used with separable rubber sealer ring. Another is metal lid to which a sealing compound is already applied and over which the metal band is screwed. So this is about the use of glass jar for canning. So once again we will repeat the key principles of canning fish. First is the commercial sterility, that is achieving a state where no harmful bacteria including those that cause botulism can survive. So all bacteria will be killed, all pathogens will be killed, or most of the spores also will be killed. The second is the hermetic sealing, that is ensuring a tight seal to prevent contamination after processing. So this sealing doesn't allow permeability for moisture or air and no bacterial contamination. And the third principle is proper heat processing. So achieving the necessary temperature and time to destroy bacteria, often requiring a pressure canner for low acid foods like fish. So fish, meat are considered as low acid food. For them we need a very high pressure, and for which we need a special kind of processing machine which is called retort. Now we will discuss about the canning process. First we will discuss in a small scale canning or home level canning. In Western countries it is done at home level using the small pressure canner or pressure cooker or autoclave like machines. So the first step is preparation of fish. Fish are gutted, cleaned and iced as soon as possible. Fillets can be prepared. Then large fish may be cut into smaller pieces and washed in clean water and drained to dry. So this is the preparation for the fish or meat. We have to make small piece, clean and dry. The second step is cleaning of jars, that is the container. Mostly it is done in glass jar or glass bottles. So these jars should be thoroughly cleaned with hot water and it can be sterilized by boiling in water or by applying steam. The third step is filling of jars. So these sterilized clean jars are packed with cleaned fish. Preferably these fish should be preheated, and during filling headspace of an inch must be left. That means the jar should not be completely filled. At the top portion at least 1 inch should be empty, so that it will not disturb the sealing and it will create a vacuum during the process of sealing. There should not be any air pockets left. When we are putting the pieces, not much air should be there. That is again removed by application of steam. And many times some gravy or cured solution or brine solution is also added. So in continuation about the small scale or home canning, the fourth step is closing of jars. Already filling is done. The warm dried lids are put on jars and rims are tightened. As I said, there are screw in the glass bottle or jars. The lids with sealing compound requiring boiling or holding in warm water before use may be handled as per the directions of the manufacturers, because this sealing step is extremely important. That is the most important aspect for preventing the post-processing contamination. Now the last step, that is the heating of jars. Here the sealed jars are placed in pressure canner and heating is done. So this is a small scale canning device working like a autoclave. The pressure canner should be in perfect order and directions given to work with it by the manufacturer should be followed. So here the proper temperature should be achieved that can gives the sterilization, and proper timing should be followed. After that only we should stop it and cool it as early as possible. Now we will discuss about the industrial canning, that is in large scale canning operations in the industry, either for fish and meat. It is almost similar. Here first I will tell briefly in the flow chart, and then I am going to discuss in more details. So we can see that cleaning of fish and meat one side, and the other side there is condiments to make a gravy. So these together are pre-cooking done at around 70 degrees Celsius for 15 to 30 minutes. After that this goes for filling into the can. This filling can be manually or mechanically. If it is a moderate scale we can do by manually, whereas in a large scale industry it should be done mechanically. Now in continuation about the flow chart of operation in industrial canning, the filling is done in such a way that there is a empty space, that is the adjustment of head space, and after that exhausting of the air. So this is done in a small scale by passing the can through steam, so that the steam will occupy the space of air, and immediately after that the lid is placed and sealing is done. So it minimizes the strain on the can seams due to expansion of air during heating. So due to this exhausting of air, a minor vacuum is created that gives a special protection from the expansion. Now after that there is double seaming as I discussed earlier, and followed by retorting, that is the actual heat processing leading to sterilization. This is done by high temperature, which is possible only at high pressure. After the processing it should be cooled as early as possible, and then after cooling there will be drying and the labeling and storage and marketing. So this is the flow of operation which I am going to explain in more details. Now we will discuss little bit more details about the steps in industrial canning. The first step is the preparation of fish and gravy. The fish has to be cleaned and gutted, and in case of big fish the deboning should be done. The fillets should be taken and we can make 4 centimeter cubes. In case of meat also same practice can be done. And then a gravy should be prepared, or a brine solution should be prepared as per requirement. In case of gravy we can have condiments, tomatoes, dry spices, salt, etc. So this depends on the type of canning we want, and this gravy will be mixed with the pieces and filling will be done in the next step. The second step is the pre-cooking. Pre-cooking is done depending on the type and final product we wish to make. The fish and gravy both are pre-cooked at 70 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes. It causes shrinkage of fish chunks and reduces the initial microbial load, and it helps in proper packing inside the container or the can, and it will help in eliminating the air space and thereby creating better exhaustion or vacuum. So this is a very important step before sealing, that is the pre-cooking. So the third step is filling. The pre-cooked fish is placed into the can, often in a specific style depending on the plan of processing. It could be raw, it could be partially cooked, or it could be with brine, or it could be with gravy. So filling in cans done leaving proper headspace, which I have told earlier also. Half of the gravy is filled first at the bottom, followed by the chunks will be filled, and then at the top again the gravy will be filled. The special care is taken to avoid trapping of air during this operation. So when the chunks are partially cooked, it helps in better filling and avoiding the air space, and that helps in during the exhaustion and creating the vacuum before sealing. So the next step, the fourth step, is exhausting. This is a very important step, that is to remove the air from the top before it is sealed and thereby to create a vacuum. So this is removal of air. This is done by two ways. One is by manual, another is by mechanical and automatic. So this helps in creating the vacuum, and that gives extra space for expansion after the processing and storage. So in case of manual, the filled can will go through a steam chamber through a conveyor, and when it goes through the steam will occupy the space of air, and when it comes out it is sealed with the lid immediately. Later when the vapors get condensed, it creates the vacuum. Whereas in case of mechanized automatic system, it creates the vacuum and do the sealing simultaneously. So that is the next step about the sealing. The fifth step is seaming or sealing. So the can is then sealed, ensuring an airtight closure to prevent air and microorganism from entering. So this is done after creating the exhaustion and removing the air, as I mentioned, by steaming or by automatic sealing. Usually it is done by double simmer machine. In modern industrialized large scale processing, it is done by a automatic system by creating vacuum and sealing, and it is actually a double sealing, and which is also called as hermetic sealing. So this sealing do not permit any air, moisture or any bacteria and any kind of contamination. The sixth step is the actual retort processing or thermal processing or heat processing. The sealed cans are subjected to high temperature around 113 to 160 degrees Celsius. If the temperature is above 130 or 40 degrees Celsius, we can achieve the perfect sterility, whereas it is when 120 and below, we can get a commercial sterility. So to achieve commercial stability, it is important for actual long storage shelf life by killing all the bacteria, all the spoilage organisms. When the temperature is very high, we can kill all the spores also, and then we can have perfect sterilization with a long shelf life up to 3 years at room temperature. Here we will see about the retort. This is the modern canning machine, we can say. It's a highly modified autoclave with all kind of facilities inside for loading the bottles or cans, or nowadays there is retort pouches. There is a special device for injecting the steam. There are different kind of sensors for monitoring the temperature and pressure. It is called hydrostatic retort, like a autoclave. It could be agitating or non-agitating type. The containers, that is the cans or the pouches, can be rotated. There is a specific device, then it is called agitating. Otherwise it is called non-agitating. Now the next step is cooling. After the heat processing, it should be cooled as early as possible. So cans are cooled quickly to prevent spoilage and ensure product quality. The fast cooling up to 30 to 40 degrees Celsius to give heat shock to the thermophilic bacteria. So if the cooling is not done fast, there can be some thermophilic bacteria which will grow at this high temperature of 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. So cooling should be done fast and bring to a temperature of 30 to 40 degrees Celsius. And the last stage is the storage. The canned fish can be stored at room temperature for extended periods due to sterility achieved through the canning process by using high temperature. Cans should be stored in a cool and dry place, preferably at a temperature of about 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. So after the cooling, actually there should be a washing and drying, and then there can be some labeling over the surface, and then only it becomes a finished product for storage and marketing. Now we will discuss at the end almost, that is the success factors of fish canning or even for meat canning. The first thing is careful selection of the raw materials, that is the kind of fish or meat. So as I mentioned earlier, the fatty fishes are not very suitable because high fat may lead to oxidation. Then checking the equipment to be used, that is the retort. It's a very high pressure machine, so it should be checked thoroughly for functioning of every technical aspect. There is third factor like quick preparation to conserve the freshness. So the fish or meat should not be allowed to deteriorate. We should start the process as early as possible when they are fresh. Then provide timetable. So it's a heat processing, so it has a lot of thermodynamic calculation. Proper time, temperature of processing, etc. should be carefully followed. The cans and jars should be truly hermetically sealed. That means the perfect hermetic sealing that we have discussed is it should be checked thoroughly. That is the most important for long-term storage and shelf life. And lastly, the store in a cool, dry place. So these are some of the important factors for success of canning in fish or meat. This is a photograph from the industrial level, how the large scale canning happens. We can see the raw fish before processing. We can see the cans in large number being filled, and after that they are cooking and sealing and final processing, different stages in this photograph. Here we can see the mechanized large scale industry for canning. The rectangular shaped cans filled with whole fish and added with brine, and then they will be sealed and go for processing. Here we can see different kind of finished can with different shape and size. There is even retort pouches, so which I have not discussed here. So nowadays there is a special kind of packaging material, that is a flexible material, that is called laminates. That's a combination of several layers of aluminum and polyethylene, and finally we can develop the heat stable flexible pouch, and those are called as retortable pouch or retort pouch. So instead of metal cans or aluminum cans, the material can be sealed, filled and sealed in this, and processing can be done. However, the shelf life will be less in this case. We can see different size and shape of the cans processed fish or meat. Here we can see the different type of cans with different kind of fish or other muscle foods. There are like shellfish or other different variety of sea fish, and they are all open after canning. This is showing the round with two-piece can, rectangular can. So this is the final look of the product when it is open. So now we are at the end of today's lecture. So I will summarize. Today we have discussed about the thermal processing and preservation of fish or meat, and we have discussed what is the principle of thermal preservation, pasteurization and sterilization, and in application we call it canning, and the different type of canning and the different kind of canning materials we have discussed. Then there is small scale canning or home level canning we have discussed, and then we have discussed the steps in canning in an industrial level. For both fish and meat it is almost similar, and the same canning can be done either in metal cans or in flexible pouches. Now it is laminate, we called the retort pouch. We have discussed about the retorting machine, which is like a autoclave, but it is highly modernized and highly technical facility with all kind of automatic systems, sensors and temperature and pressure display. We have seen different kind of processed products. So briefly there is a raw material, then pre-treatment, washing, cleaning, preheating, and then packing and sealing, and then there is sterilization, then cooling, and the finished product is ready. So this is all about the canning of fish or meat. Thank you.